Well, good morning, brothers and sisters. We're going to be looking at Proverbs 19 today. And I wanted to focus on verse 21. I'm sure if you've read Proverbs 19, whether it was today or in the last several days, or you've read it in your life, it has rung true for you again and again, especially when you see it come to fruition. And the proverb says this: many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. This proverb is really highlighting the sovereignty of God in all things. The scriptures are replete. All the Old Testament, the New Testament, Israel, the church, the saints of old, Christians throughout church history, even to our lives today. Whether we understand what these verses mean, we know experientially, sooner or later, what these verses at least imply or have felt like. So, for example, behind me, there is a lot of construction going on. When we bought our house almost 4 years ago, this was nothing but woods. Well, now it's not. Now there are a variety of buildings, from apartments to a preschool, all basically taking up the entire corner immediately right behind our house. Well, 3 or 4 years ago, it looked like woods. We bought a house and were, at least hoping to live on a cul-de-sac that had a little more of a natural woods feel. But there were plans already in place that I was not aware of that building would occur. And over the years, we've seen these trees go down little bit by little bit. Bulldozers come through and level out the land little bit by little bit. But then all of a sudden, in the last year or so, the construction has really taken off. And now I think they're on a pretty tight deadline where they are working around the clock, even when it's pitch dark. And you're seeing people have these big kind of spotlights on to do their work. What's the point of the illustration? Well, I had a plan. We had a plan to move to this part of town, build this house, and then over time we realized someone else had a plan. Developers had plans, a preschool owner had a plan, apartments owners had plans, these construction workers have plans. There are so many plans that have gone in just to this one project, and that's just including me and the people involved. But friends, there's also someone else who has a plan, and that is the Lord. The Lord is the one who creates the world, sustains the world, governs the world, and directs the affairs of the world without being the author of sin or evil, yet ordaining and predestining all things that come to pass. We don't have to fully grasp or understand that. We just have to realize it's true. And that's what Proverbs 19:21 is saying. Many are the plans in the mind of a man. That's in my mind and your mind. The people living on the southeast side of Fort Smith, and 7 billion people around the world. There are so many plans we all have every day, all the time. Plans to get up at a certain time, plans to eat something for breakfast, plans to meet with someone over lunch, plans to play a sport, plans to play an instrument, plans to go to a school, plans to get a new job, plans to get married. There are so many things every day, all the time, we are making plans. Sometimes those plans are almost out of habit and routine. We almost don't even think about it. There are plans that we seek advice from others to say, hey, what do you think of this? Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you have any thoughts to this? Hey, I'm not sure what to do in this situation. Do you have any wisdom? But then there are plans that we probably have, whether we've written them down on a piece of paper or in a journal or on an app on our phone or in our computer, or maybe some kind of drawing. We have thought about it, pondered upon it, weighed out the pros and cons, prayed, considered what it's going to cost, consider how much time it's going to take, considered all the variables. And you and I have plans right now that maybe even some people are not even fully aware of. And yet, in all of these plans, God has a perfect and wonderful and good plan that will stand even if our plans faceplant. That's what's so amazing about this verse. It teaches us really at least three things. Number one, we should have hope in our plans. We should have hope in our plans. We should not put our hope in our plans. We should commit our work to the Lord and put our hope in God, whose purposes and plans will stand. We know that our God will work all things together for good to those who love him, to those who are called according to his purpose. And that means no matter what plans you and I make, whether they're really good, they're okay, or they're bad, God's perfect plan will prevail. It will stand. So put our hope in God, not in our plans. Number two, we should make our plans wisely. Throughout the Proverbs, we are told that it's the mark of a fool that does what is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. In a multitude of counsel, there is safety. Consult the word, go to the Lord in prayer, consider providence, consider what God has made available and an opportunity in front of you, and then consider the wise counsel of trusted friends, those who love you, that fear the Lord, and those who can give you objective, unbiased counsel. And then thirdly, within making these plans, we put our hope in God. We seek out wise counsel. But at the end of the day, number three, we just leave the results to God. Whatever we plan to do today, it should not lead to fatalism. In other words, our decisions don't matter, or what's going to be is going to be, or let go and let God, and just live this fatalistic mentality that believes erroneous things about God's sovereignty and man's responsibility. No, the Bible doesn't pit these things as enemies. They are equally true. God is totally 100% free to do all that he desires, and he will fulfill his plans and purposes. His purpose will stand. And yet the Bible is also equally committed to upholding man's responsibility for his actions, his words, and his plans. So friends, with all those three things being considered, just because God is sovereign doesn't mean we don't plan. We absolutely do plan. Many are the plans in the mind of a man. Doesn't say we don't plan. In fact, it's even implied that we're going to make many plans in our life, even today and for the rest of our life. But we should put our hope in God, not in our plans. Even our best of plans can still be improved by the wisdom and power of God. So we should write our plans in pencil, not ink. So if God says, nope, those are not the plans I have, he erases them. And if he takes them from our hands, it doesn't hurt really bad. Put your hope in God. Number two, consult wisdom from God in prayer, the word, and through a multitude of counsel. Don't be a Lone Ranger Christian. Don't think of yourself more wiser than you really are. Trust the authority, trust the shepherding, trust the godly examples he puts in your life, friends, pastors, parents, etc., as God's gifts to you and I. And then, number three, leave the results to God. That's what should allow us to put our head on our pillow every night with peace. Friends, I just want to say on a personal note, in that last part I was talking about a little bit ago about some of us have plans that maybe we've never shared with anyone. Well, sometimes, the difference between a dream and a plan is a dream as you think about it. A plan is you actually map out kind of steps towards a goal. And friends, let me just give you a practical example of how I'm thinking about Proverbs 19:21 in light of our church. Guys, I'm excited about what the Lord's doing in our church's life. And there are two things that are equally true as we just looked at in Proverbs this past week on the work ethic of an ant. We are to both think about the here and now and to think about the future. We can't just choose one or the other. It has to be both. Well, for me as a pastor, it's just like leading a family. I have to do the same as a pastor. I have to think about the future, whether or not our congregation or the vast majority of members do. I have to. That's a part of my shepherding role, is to get out in front of the sheep, to lead them under the good shepherd's leadership to green pastures and still waters. That's my hope. That's my desire. And I primarily do that through the feeding of the sheep with the milk and meat of God's word. And so one of the things that the Lord has pressed upon me through John 21, 1 Peter 5, and other passages, as we're thinking about two things that are equally important and equally true: the building up and edification of our church family, but also the construction, the plans, the building, the fundraising of what it's going to take to build an actual new church building just right over there behind that person's house, just about 1,000 yards from me or 500 yards from me. So here would be some principles that I've thought through on a personal level and as a pastor. I have been convinced of this, as if the Lord is telling me, Blake, you take care of my people, I'll take care of the plywood. Feed my sheep, seek first my kingdom, and I'll take care of all these other things. And so that's basically been my primary objective, is to shepherd the souls of the people, to shepherd the saints at CCBC, to give myself to the ministry of the word and prayer. And the Lord will determine the breadth of the church, the size of the church, the budget of the church, but also the resources that we're going to need to build a church. And yet, on the other hand, as a pastor, on a team of leaders, as elders, we have to think carefully and wisely about the future. And we are convinced through providence, through scripture, through the Lord's provision, and through the growth of the community we are wanting to root our church in, that we have no reason not to believe it's going to be, it's God's desire for us to be a permanent building, a permanent meeting space, a permanent church building on Shag-Halley Boulevard. But at the end of the day, we have many plans, but it's only the purpose of the Lord that will stand. So how do I think about it? Well, number one, we put our hope in God, not in our plans. God's not going to change. God's going to be good no matter what happens with our church. God's going to be good no matter how long he keeps me as a pastor on this earth. God's going to be good no matter what he brings into your life today. He's going to be good, and he's worthy to be praised. We're going to give thanks to him, for his steadfast love endures forever, regardless if our plans work out the way we wanted to or not. And so that's where our joy and confidence comes from. Number two, we seek wise counsel. We seek wise counsel as elders. We speak with congregants. We consider the architect's perspective, obviously considering talking to the bank and thinking through various options on loans, and if that's something our church is willing and able to do. We're thinking through the size of the building, the supplies of the facilities, what we will prioritize as a church body. And then, of course, talking with other people outside of our own church, other pastors, other Christians, other people that are excited and believe in what we're trying to do. And so, Lord willing, when we get those conceptual design phase plans finished in the next, hopefully, 3 to 6 months, being able to share that with others so they can consider maybe giving towards that ministry of our church to the building fund. But then thirdly, guys, leave the results to God. Leave the results to God, just like everything we do in life. Praying for our children, praying for unbelievers, praying for our spouse, starting a business, running a business, working out of school. I mean, whatever it is we do, we're just going to leave the results to God. His purpose will stand. So we're going to make plans. We're going to put hope in God, not our plans. We're going to consult wise counsel to the best of our ability. We are going to walk by faith, not by sight. We're going to trust that God will make us more like Christ in the process of all of it. And we're going to leave the results to him because he's good, he's sovereign, and he knows best. Friends, think about Proverbs 19:21 today. Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord will stand. How does that truth about God and his sovereignty, how does that bring you comfort today? And how does that maybe even convict you and I today when we are tempted to get angry, frustrated, mad, or grow into despair when our plans don't work out? Meditate on that. Talk about it with others. And I look forward to hearing more about what the Lord does in your heart as you trust in his good purposes that will stand in our lives as well as around the world and for all time. God bless.